Inside Biden's reversal on sending long-range missiles to Ukraine. The New York Times. Washington. From the opening days of the war in Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told President Joe Biden there was one weapon he needed above all others. Long-range missiles, known as ATACMS, that could reach airbases and Russian troops more than 100 miles less behind the lines. For the better part of 18 months, Biden had one response, both publicly and in his sometimes tense private meetings with Zelensky. No. The weapons, he said, could cross one of the red lines of President. Below are your comments. Russia has been targeting apartment buildings, power plants, water systems, etc. So I have little pity on them. If they wake up in the morning to find their Air Force and Navy in ruins because they got hit with long-range weaponry, whether it be drones, missiles, or other, it is fine with me. These are military targets, not civilians. Ukraine is using the missiles tactfully and strategically to their advantage. The playing field needs to be level. Exactly why the press should not be told anything of military significance until after it is a done deal. It is very good deal that US could turned Russia from second best military in the world to the third best military in Ukraine, after Ukraine and Wagner, with only 3% of defense budget. With 3% of US defense budget, US has reduced Russian military capability by 60% for good. Russia now has to resort to. Without long-range missiles, Ukraine loses too many equipment and soldiers without gaining much growth. ND. Something got to change or Russia would swallow Ukraine in a heartbeat. A little guy can't fight a giant. Next news. White House preparing funding request that includes Israel, Ukraine aid. The Hill. The White House is preparing a supplemental funding request that would include billions of dollars for Israel, Ukraine and border security, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. The administration is expected to send the request to Congress later this week, after President Biden returns from a trip to Israel. A source said details. Below are your comments. Funding request for other countries? Maybe this Congress should think about putting a 2024 budget together for America. That is Congress's only job. Why are people continuing to elect these incompetent politicians? Both Democrats and Republicans are failing at doing their job. The question is, why does a wealthy country like Israel immediately require funding from the USWH? Sports a $33.6 trillion debt? How about funding the security of our country, like a border wall and more personnel working that wall? Of course they will fund other countries, it called kickbacks through these channels. Trump asked for $5 billion for the border wall and it was voted down. Now the Biden administration finds hundreds of billions to fund other countries. Do you really think he puts America first? Wake up. What happens when we have given all of our weapons and money to Israel and Ukraine? Next, we will have to fund Taiwan and South Korea wars. These countries have relied on the USA for their protection for decades, with zero in return. Well, I guess Ukraine did fund the Biden family. Next news. Iran shares chilling message for Israel after Gaza hospital explosion. Bleep 500. Time is over. Fox News. Iran's foreign minister posted an ominous message about Israel following an explosion at a hospital that left hundreds dead. The cause of the explosion has been disputed. Below are your comments. The question is a preemptive strike more effective than one of response? A well-proven fact, there is no possibility of peaceful coexistence. If Iran and the other countries of the Middle East are so concerned about the people of Gaza, then why don't they accept all the people into their countries instead, keeping them right next to Israel? Egypt closed the borders and won't let any of them into the country. The rest of the countries nay. Israel would not have bombed a hospital. They knew the optics would be terrible. Hamas, on the other hand, has no problem using the deaths of their own people to garner sympathy for their cause. The most probable answer is that Hamas used the people in the hospital as involuntary martyrs. They have. Hamas is responsible for this, for what they are bringing to the Palestinian people. Israel has been giving warning for Palestinians to leave. If Israel were responsible for this bombing, that hospital would not be standing. They all know it, and anyone with common sense can see it. Next news. Romania thanks Ukraine for rejecting notion of Moldovan language, a Russian invention. Ukrainska PR. Avda. Romanian Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu has thanked Ukraine for its decision to reject the artificial term Moldovan language, which is a Russian invention. Source. Ciolacu at a joint press conference with Ukraine's Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, as reported by European Pravda. Quote, "From now on there is only one official language which exists at an international level. The Romanian language." Below are your comments. I guess the only difference between Romanian language and Moldovan language is that the former uses Latin and the latter uses Cyrillic. The same great differences is between Catholic Croatians and Orthodox Serbs. In the past, the Soviet Russification enforcers made Azerbaijanis and Central Ossetia, Ukraine and Romania oppressing Moldavia. By the way, Ukrainian borders originated in Soviet Union. So only near the end of the article do they admit the headline was a total fabrication. It wasn't a Russian invention, it was a Soviet invention. They could have added that the Soviet inventor was not a Russian, but a certain Georgian we all know and love so well. How about the artificial, disgusting Ukrainian language? So, two trolls supporting each other, Rick and M. Next news. Kosovo asks for more NATO-led peacekeepers along the border with Serbia. Associated Press. Kosovo's prime minister on Wednesday asked NATO-led peacekeepers to increase their presence on the northern border with Serbia, saying the area was the entry point for illegal weapons and threats to stability. Such an increased presence should be focused in guarding the border between Kosovo and Serbia, where all Serbia's weaponry has arrived from and the threat to Kosovo comes, Prime Minister Albin Kurti told Maj. Ozgan Ulutas, the new commander of the Kosovo Force Mission, or KFOR. Below are your comments. Freedom of movement? Freedom of exchange of goods? Freedom of repression? Freedom for people to choose their own representatives? Freedom of education? That's all Kurti is guaranteeing? My foot. Everything and more is non-existent for Serbs of Kosovo. The man is power-hungry, celebrity status who? Kosovo was always part of Serbia. Bill Clinton and NATO bombed Serbia back to Stone Age, bombing Serbia for 79 days and nights, and so forced them to give Kosovo to Albania. So now, the Serbs who are still there, controlled and oppressed by NATO's armed KFOR, live worse and the people in Gaza. Kosovo is part of Serbia. Kosovo never was a country. Next news. U.S. vetoes UN resolution condemning Hamas attacks on Israel, violence against citizens. The Hill. The United States vetoed a United Nations resolution Wednesday condemning Hamas attacks on Israel and violence against civilians, saying it did not include language about Israel's right to defend its CLF. The U.S. was the only member nation in the 15-member Security Council to vote against the resolution, as 12 their countries voted to approve the. Below are your comments. Israel's right to defend itself. Not only Israel, other countries, such as India, as well, which are targets of terrorist activities. They have right to defend with their own resources, not my tax dollar. ! Remove the UN from U.S. soil. They need to be in a more appropriate country like Russia or China, since that is the direction they seem to lean. Where were all these sympathetic countries when Russia and Assad were bombing civilians and targeting hospitals, schools and marketplaces? That is 50 years that the U.S. vetoes every resolution condemning Israel for its illegal occupation of Palestinian land. But what is new here is that the U.S. claims here is that only Israel has the right to defend itself, not the Palestinian people. Doesn't that remind anyone something which happened? Next news. Ukraine recap. Zelensky keeps channels open with key allies. Bloomberg. President Volodymyr Zelensky discussed ways to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses and protect GRA in shipments, as well as critical infrastructure, in calls Wednesday with the French president and He Norwegian Prime Minister. Most read from Bloomberg. Biden vows aid for Gaza, backs Israel over Hospi. Tal blast hospital blast bleep hundreds as Israel, Hamas trade blame QQQ advances in late trading as Tesla rebounds. Markets wrap UPenn donors pile pressure on school as David Magerman polls. Below are your comments. The U.S. should have stayed out of Ukraine, Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea, Cuba, Colombia, Africa, and OT. Her failed military misadventures, the latest being Israel, Hamas. The U.S. thinks it rules the world and the world is tired of it. Why can't the U.S. try diplomacy instead of tyranny? Use. Zelensky will keep his hand out begging for more and more. Zelensky must make sure the Tiffany store stays open for his wife's love for nice expensive jewelry that she loves to purchase with U.S. taxpayers' credit card. Keeping channels open means still begging now even louder. As long as they keep their wallets open to him. Next news. It may be Putin's horror story for NATO. Ukraine's Air Force comments on hypersonic missiles above Black Sea. Ukrainska Pravda. New forecasts of Vladimir Putin about Russian MiG-31K military jets patrolling the airspace over the Black Sea may be aimed at increasing the tension, but they do not radically change anything for the defense forces of Ukraine. Below are your comments. Can MiG-31 detect F-22? Not at all. The MiG-31's Zaslan M radar has about 400 km detection range against 20 square meters target. That corresponds to a detection range of less than 18 km against F-22. Minus 40 decibels. In a non-jamming environment. The MiG-31BM can't have a targeting solution against F-22 outside Visua. Don't forget folks, that hypersonic missile is near hypersonic during its boost phase. It has to slow down for its target seeker and terminal maneuvers to work. At that time it's not much harder to intercept than anything else. Ukraine has pretty good luck hitting them with Patriots then. I wonder what percentage of Russian citizens would like to see Putin go away. Russian air defenses shot down their newer Su-35s twice in the past 2 weeks. Timing is right for an S-300 RU crew to bleep down a MiG-31. Next news. How China could play a key role in the Israel-Hamas war, and why it's not time. China holds considerable influence over Iran. But it's unlikely it can, or even wants to, use it to de-escalate the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Below are your comments. China won't walk in the trap created by USA and UK. China wants peace and stability for the people, not wars. China is there to do business and not warfare. China do not impose the Chinese standard to others. That is the major difference. One thing that Israel can learn from China is how to deprogram radical Muslims like they did in Xinjiang. Get them to work for living like people do in normal societies, rather than going into an endless cycle of retaliatory bleep which only breeds the next generation of China's get. China wants the U.S. to be embroiled in multiple wars. They have no interest in bringing any conflicts to an end. China is smart not to get involved in a hopeless situation created by the US and UK. Communist China is sitting and waiting for the right time to invade Taiwan while the USA and its allies are depleting their resource with Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, etc. Next news. U.S. unveils new sanctions on Iran's missile and drone programs as UN restrictions expire. CNN. The Biden administration on Wednesday unveiled new sanctions targeting Iran's ballistic missile and drone programs as the United States and dozens of other partners vowed to continue to counter those programs as a set of United Nations restrictions expired. Below are your comments. Does it mean that the U.S. is against the UN resolution? Iran can't violate the limits of the deal when Trump himself bleeped the deal with Iran. U.S. sanctions are a joke. By forming BRICS, everyone is laughing at such a move. Moreover, America, and its EU allies, should adopt a new approach with Africa and Asia. The alternative is the West subsequently starving. The UN is not very united anymore. Everyone has to do their own diplomacy, it seems. Big darn deal. Why don't you patent it? Everyone who wants to buy Iran's missiles and drones are on the US's sanctions except Iran's enemies. That very much isolates the US down to its world UK, France, plus small Germany. Those who are sanctioned don't give a middle one for it. Iran is known as. Next news. Putin calls ATACMS transfer to Ukraine mistake, admits missiles pose additional threat. Kyiv. Appendant. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on October 18 that the U.S. made a great mistake by providing Ukraine with ATACMS long-range missiles, which have reportedly dealt significant damage to Russian forces in a recent attack. Below are your comments. However, the Kremlin's leader voiced confidence that the Russian military would be capable of repelling ATACMS strikes and that the long-range missiles were fundamentally incapable of changing the situation at the front. Well, you didn't repel them when they hit your airbases. Hurry and get those F-16s in there. On Putin's instructions, the Russian Air Force begins regular patrols in the neutral zone over the Black Sea. Our MiG-31 aircraft are armed with Kinzhal weapon systems. Ukraine appreciates you admitting the grey at threat these planes present to its national security and will look to knock them out. Time to send Ukraine a lot more missiles so that they can continue to make it rain on Russia. Next news. Lavrov calls North Koreans fraternal people. Ukrainska Pravda. Sergei Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, during his visit to North Korea said that the two countries share historically fraternal ties. Source: Lavrov during a speech in Pyongyang quote, "To our common, great regret, the events of the last many years show that Japanese militarism has not disappeared anywhere, American hegemony has not disappeared anywhere, and in general, Western neo-colonialism remains the main course of action of Europeans, Americans and Japan." Below are your comments. Russian and North Korean citizens have a lot in common. They live in poverty so the oligarchs and dictators can live a life in opulent luxury. Yeah, that makes sense. I can tell they share the same blood, same mind, same ambitions. New low for Russia to beg North Korea to be their friends. Russia's bleeping the bottom of the barrel for friends. Fraternal people? So, Russia is ready to invade N.K. We all saw what they done to their Ukrainian brothers. Next news. Lavrov thanks North Korea for its help in war against Ukraine. Kyiv Independent. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov thanked North Korea for its fundamental, unequivocal support in the war against Ukraine, Russian state media outlet RIA Novosti reported on October 18. Below are your comments. Who would have guessed this 5 years ago? One of the, supposedly first-rate nations asking, no begging, for help from the most poor of the poor nations, and Russia seems proud, go figure. This is awesome. First the Ukraine has wiped out a majority of Russia's military power and now they are working on number RTH Korea through Russia. By the time North Korea actually provokes the US into a war, it will be over within 12 hours. Then South Korea can walk in and take over North Korea. Whoever thought that the world would see the Russians kissing up to North Korea? Add Trump from his photo with Lavrov, laughing it up in the WH Oval Office, and you have the axis of evil personified. South Korea is thankful also now that the North has less ammunition. Next news. Iran calls on Arab nations to impose oil embargo on Israel, expel ambassadors. Fox News. Iran called on its Arab neighbors to expel Israeli ambassadors and impose an oil embargo on the country Wednesday, but OPEC does not appear to be budging. Below are your comments. Trust me, and I know the mullah's mentality very well. While USS Eisenhower and USS Ford are in the region, the mullahs are not going to do anything, all just rhetorics. They are guarding their nuclear installations, which are way more important to them than the entire Palestinians. They understand. Better fill your automobile or trunk tank today. Price at the pump is likely to go up by at least $1 a gallon by tomorrow. The only constant is that regardless of what situation unfolds in the Middle East, the price at the pump will be Biden's fault. Iran could easily be embargoed themselves. USA should have taken care of Iran during Carter term when they took hostages. Iran should be next. Next news. Trudeau warns Alberta against exiting National Pension Fund. Bloomberg. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau cautioned Alberta's government against pulling out of Canada's federal pension plan, saying it could weaken the pensions of millions of seniors and hardworking people in Alberta and right across the country. Most read from Bloomberg. Biden vows aid for Gaza, backs Israel over hospital blast bleep hundreds as Israel, Hamas trade blame QQQ advances in La Tay trading as Tesla rebounds. Markets wrap UPenn donors pile pressure on school as David. Below are your comments. So them taking their money hurts others. What is the impact on them? That's probably more important as it is indeed theirs. The politician meanders for votes. Albertans, as well as all other Canadians, are aware of Trudeau's version of future stability on a financial level. Warnings from this particular PM will be met with all due skepticism, as they should be. Next news. U.S. vetoes UN Security Council action on Israel, Gaza. Reuters. United Nations. Reuters. The United States vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution on Wednesday that would have called for humanitarian pauses in the conflict between Israel and Palestinian Hamas militants to allow humanitarian aid access to the Gaza Strip. The vote on the Brazilian drafted text was twice delayed in the last couple of days as the United States tries to broker aid access to Gaza. We are on the ground doing the hard work of diplomacy, U.S. Ambassador to the United. Below are your comments. Why is there even a United Nations? Pause the invasion at our own borders first. Humanitarian to whom? The only UN resolution that should be considered is one that labels Hamas as the aggressor and a terrorist organization and as such demands Hamas unconditional surrender. It's interesting that Russia abstained from voting. Throw the UN out of NYC. They are totally worthless. Next news. Israel reports 23 Ukrainians bleep, no confirmation from Ukraine so far. Ukrainska Pravda. 23 Ukrainians were bleep as a result of the Hamas attack that began on the 7th of October, as the Israeli Interior Ministry reports. Ukraine can currently confirm the death of 13 people. Source: Mikhailo Brodsky, Israeli ambassador to Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda. Citing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Quote from Brodsky. The updated report indicates that 23 citizens of Ukraine were bleep as a result of the Hamas attack on Israel. Below are your comments. Were they training for the Azov group? Really a fake news story about Ukrainians bleep in Israel? You just cannot make this stuff up. Israel's response needs to be proportionate. Israel should bleep 100,000 citizens of Gaza for every Israeli that they bleeped. It needs to start now. Level every city in Gaza. Sorry, conservatives will be Ukraine never reports any Ukrainians bleep. Next news. Putin arrives in China with nuclear briefcase. Ukrainska Pravda. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been filmed in Beijing following his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, escorted by officers carrying the nuclear briefcase. Source: Reuters. RIA_Kremlinpool details. The nuclear briefcase is reportedly being carried, as is traditional, by an officer of the Russian Naval Fleet. Below are your comments. A tactic to try to scare the world. Usually, it is hidden from view. Putler and Xi. The two that bring nothing but war and misery to the entire planet. Nah, that's his diaper and wipes briefcase. He's terrified of being poisoned or losing the war to Ukraine. Lots of upset tummy moments in his LIFE. Putler's briefcase contains all of his favorite rectal enlargement tools. That giant poop he looks like he's always holding in. Media stunt. Keep moving along. Nothing to see here. Next news. Biden to deliver primetime address Thursday on Israel-Ukraine wars. The Hill. President Biden will address the nation Thursday about the wars in Ukraine and the conflict between Israel and Hamas in a primetime speech from the Oval Office. The White House announced Biden will address the nation to discuss our response to Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel and Russia's ongoing brutal war against Ukraine. The speech. Below are your comments. Wonder what lies he is spout out tonight. Here we go. Another embarrassing moment for our country. Barack Obama and George Soros have already created old Joe Brandon's uninformed liberal Democrat tall. King points, the Democrats' biggest fear is that old Joe breaks his puppet string. Old man will ramble on incoherently. Then trip and fall, get picked up by his babysitters and placed back in the basement. Next news. United Nations to vote on resolution condemning Hamas attack and all violence against civilians. Fox News. Brazil, which holds the Security Council presidency, intends to introduce a resolution condemning Hamas and the ongoing violence against civilians in Israel and Gaza. Below are your comments. Why is Brandon there? Of course, to delay Israel's response and give Hamas time to regroup. Israel's response needs to be proportionate. Israel should bleep 100,000 citizens of Gaza for every Israeli that they bleeped. It needs to start now. Level every city in Gaza. By the way, conservatives will be. But since Israel's been doing the same to Palestinian civilians for 70 years, they get a free pass. Question mark. Wake up America, the Muslim invasion is in full effect. Today Detroit, tomorrow your neighborhood. Close the borders now. Next news. Biden admin unveils sanctions on Iran missile, drone programs after UN ban ends. NBC News. The Biden admin unveiled sanctions on Iran's missile and drone programs after UN sanctions ended. The U.S. has cited Iran as complicit in the Hamas attack on Israel. Below are your comments. They were under sanction all these years and still develop the most diverse and largest stockpile of missiles in ME. Do you seriously think sanctioning a couple of more people would change their attitude? Well, they probably got all the $80 billion in weapons left in Afghanistan, so I think they're fine. Sanctions. If Iran has all these missiles, why not join them in an alliance? We can form some sort of pact where we'll buy their oil if they help protect Israel. Then we can leave the Middle East. Next news. Putin wants to visit North Korea. Lavrov arrives to build bridges. Ukrainska Pravda. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, arrived in Pyongyang on the 18th of October for a two-day visit. Source: TASS. South Korean news agency Yonhap, citing several Russian media outlets details. At the start of this week, Lavrov escorted President Vladimir Putin during his visit to Beijing and had meetings with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. Below are your comments. The axis of evil. Ad in Iran. Maybe Putin is looking for somewhere to go where he won't be arrested. Old Chunks is going to feel like a real big boy now that the dogs are playing with him. China has long wanted the resources of eastern Russia. Easier to control economically than militarily. Give Vlad a comfy window seat. PLS. Next news. U.S. announces seizure of 17 website domains used by North Korea IT workers. Reuters. The United States said on Wednesday it has seized 17 website domains used by North Korean information and technology workers in a scheme to allegedly defraud businesses, evade sanctions and fund the development of North Korea's weapons program. The seizures took place on Tuesday pursuant to a court order in Missouri, the U.S. Justice Department said in a statement. The United States has alleged that North Korea oversees thousands of IT workers around the world, primarily located in China and Russia. Below are your comments. Hoping Twitter, X was one crossing fingers grin. Pursuant to a court order in Missouri. The long arm of the law. Surely Donnie's bud wouldn't think of doing such a thing. Next news. Putin and Xi get closer. Semaphore. For Russia and China, the war in Gaza is proving to be a long-awaited distraction from the West's focus on the Ukraine war and China's crackdown on Uyghurs, analysts say. Below are your comments. We essentially have a Cold War policy of containment on Russia aggression. Should we extend it to China's participation in Russia's aggression? Perhaps it is time. Maybe they will be carrying a rainbow flag? Pooh and Piglet. Good for world peace. We need balance of power to deter WW3. She has everything to lose and nothing to gain really. Next news. She gushes over dear friend Putin as duo meet in China. Fox News. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week during a summit on the Belt and Road Initiative. Below are your comments. Both Jinping and Putin are dictators, and no matter how much they gang up against the West, they win. Both the nations face a massive demographic challenge, and their downfall is imminent. America will stand tall and firm. Parallels with history. Hitler with Mussolini. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.